All right, my brother. First and foremost, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your knowledge. This is a brother that I met named Ahmad L. We were in a 99 Names of Allah class together, and I was letting everybody know that I was working on a book project called Islamic Orders of Hip Hop, talking about the influence and the history of Islam and hip hop music. And his brother immediately started dropping knowledge about his years in hip hop, his experiences. So that's what we're gonna talk about and chop up today, man. Thank you so much for your time. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. Thanks, and you're welcome. Pleasure
Yes,
to be
sir.
here.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
whatever questions you have, it's been on the scene, not deep in the scene, but meeting a lot of people as a hip hop like house.
No doubt, no doubt. All right, so I always start off these interviews with the exact same question, which is, what is Islam?
Islam, to me, Islam is the person always in peace, despite the pillars, Hadith and Quran. It's about that inner peace first and foremost, because you have to have that peace first and foremost before you start looking into doctrine and trying to follow certain things. You got to have that peace first to digest it. So the more at peace one is the more they're able to digest the information that they need, assimilate that information. So that's how I see it.
That is real, real true. And I can definitely say from my personal experiences, Islam has definitely helped me find some inner peace, man. That's a perfect definition. So let's go back to the beginning. You were mentioning that you said you were a DJ.
Yes, a local DJ, nothing big, just a local house
Okay, gotcha.
parties, several over like a span of years. But
Okay.
out of
And what area did you mainly DJ in?
this is in the Bronx, so I was already my late teens, maybe early 20s. It was in the Bronx,
Okay. And what years was this?
Northeast Bronx. So you could say mainly after high school. So I would say like 89, 88, 89, 90, 91.
Okay.
At that time, 92. At that time, I would say between 88, 87, 88, and like 1990. I would say 1992, 1993.
Okay. Tell me about your first experience with hip hop.
First experience with hip hop, I would say.
Hold on, wait. Look, before we even do that, I thought of something else we gotta do. You broke down what's Islam, what's hip hop.
Hip hop it's a culture. It's a culture made up of people who grew up in the inner city. Us as the people growing up in the inner city, and and from that culture, there's pieces of like disco, there's pieces of jazz, there's pieces of swing, bebop, all within that music. Within hip hop, with like DJs like who are playing like the break beats, and then b-boys dancing to those break beats. So the break beats, that was like an extension of a record. Well, they'll just have two of the same records and mix that break beat. So instead of having like 2 minutes of a break beat, you have like 5, 10, 15 minutes of a break beat.
Gotcha. Understood. And what was your first experience encountering hip hop?
First experience, I would say when I was living in Harlem. I used to live on 152nd Street between Amsterdam and Broadway. And there's this park between 152nd and 151st. And they would have jams out there in the summertime. Not necessarily, we did have records that were used later on in like hip hop, later 70s, early 80s. That was like my first experience with real play. Records like Super Sperm and a whole bunch of other records that will have like break beats. just dance in the park. We also had block parties. So that's back in the, I would say the 70s was like my experience in regards to like hip hop, and then people being masters of ceremonies, which is an MC on a mic just speaking over the record. So that was, I would say that was citywide. Just just the foundations of the Bronx, from what I know. That hip hop culture, it comes from the Bronx, but you had different boroughs, different blocks having block parties, just playing music in the park. So
gotcha. And when you first experienced it, how did you feel? What was going through your mind when you felt it, saw it, and you were there with all the people? What was the crowd doing?
So back then, I was still young. So I would say, like, listening to old, like, music tapes. I would say recorded like jams, underground jams, underground tapes. I think, let's see, I'll say in the 70s. I don't remember the names of the groups, but I remember when Sugar Hill Gang went commercial, and that was 79, so they got signed to a record deal. So that's when it was commercialized, that's when I was really like, excited.
Aware of it.
Memorize that whole 15-minute track, the entire record. Guys in my block, go to my mom's house, or we go to somebody else's house, had the old long General Electric record players with the 8-track, and the record players that can hold like a stack of records and drop them one by one automatically. So we would just sit and memorize that jam, and then go back and like rap with that record playing, or just go off the top of my head just a whole song. It was that, and it was also Fatback's band as well. I think they came out before Sugar Hill Gang, but it was like not like a hip hop record per se, but it was rhyming on that record.
Gotcha. And how did that feel?
Oh, good. It was just a good feeling. You can just listening to the expressions and listening to the stories, because people like the Sugar Hill Gang, that was more like a not street story, but it was still a story with some things you can kind of relate to, like when Big Bang Hank says, driving off in the death OJ. OJ was like an Oldsmobile 98. 98. So things like that, you would kind of correlate life stories of people who drove cars, especially people a little bit older than I was back then, because I think I was about 12 when Rappers Delight came. So it was a good feeling just listening to stories, and then we would try to like write rhymes, start telling our own stories, and then afterwards different groups started coming out, and then like groups like Cold Crush Brothers, the Crash Crew, the Treacherous Three, Slimmy G, I know he was part of the Treacherous Three back then as well. And then off of Enjoy Records, but then you had Polydor, and I just started buying records then as well. So from after that, that's when it became more commercialized, and you can still tell your story. There was nobody in like management to tell these people what to say or what to do like how it is now.
Right.
Everybody had their tools. And then you had places like Union Square. I've only been there once, on 14th Street. That was like a hip hop spot. You had Latin Quarters, Rooftop in Manhattan, in Harlem. The two spots I've been to the Rooftop, and not the Latin Quarters. But yeah, it was a good feeling. It wasn't about degrading anybody. It was more, I would say, battle raps. More so battling or just telling your story. Basically, back then. So there's really no violence associated with it, even though the news would say, "Oh, it's full of violence." It wasn't violence; it's just people here, city guys, people and ladies telling their stories on wax. or sometimes at a jam. They got put on, they got placed on lives. So.
Gotcha. Now, from what I remember when I was a young kid, I was raised in a strict Christian household. So me hearing hip hop music and being influenced by hip hop music didn't come until maybe I was 11 years old. And I remember pretty much from the beginning of me listening to hip hop, I was noticing Islam. I wasn't sure exactly what it was, but Ice Cube always with the Nation of Islam, and brothers with 5%ers and stuff like that. They were talking about Brand Nubian talking about peace to Allah and justice, and so I would always hear these little things about Islam and hip hop. If you can recall, when was the first time you noticed that Islam or different iterations of Islam was becoming a part of the culture?
Let's see. Speaking of that, because I grew up in a Christian household as well. The daycare center I went to back in like the 70s, 72 was it's called Shabazz Nursery, so it was ran by the Nation of Islam.
Okay.
I was introduced to some form of Islam when I was in kindergarten. But to answer your question, I would say Lakim Shabazz. He was MC back then in the 80s, so it was Lakim Shabazz. You had Mel Kwan. He's from the Bronx, I believe. Then Gangstar, Brand Nubians. They would talk like the 5% because of the 5% Nation comes out of the Nation of Islam as well. Public Enemy. That's like 1987, 88, somewhere around there. Or even like their first one, Yo Bum Rush the Show. As the first, I think it was a 12-inch or an album I bought from them. This is before It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. So they were out from the 80s too. So, but they weren't talking Islamic stuff. Or didn't have like they had the S1Ws, but they were talking about like hip hop street. Like I think the name of the song was Uzi Weighs a Ton. Like that. Yeah, but still, Public Enemy, because they were back in the 80s. There was Lakim Shabazz, Gangstar, or Gangstar came a little bit later. Big Daddy Kane, Just Ice, 80s. Those are the ones I can remember off the top.
And what was the response of the audience and the response of the crowd when all of a sudden God started coming through and brothers talking Islam and righteousness? Yeah. Was there a big shift in the culture, or did it kind of just flow in smoothly?
I would say a little bit of both. It kind of hit the culture, and it just kind of took off. And it did come in kind of smooth, but then when it hit. Because you had guys like also from Jersey, King Son. He's a 5% Nation. I think he did like a hip house record as well back then, back in the 80s. So, and then you had this like conscious rap then. Once it took off, and most of it was based off, especially like in the Northeast, like 5%, like the Essence, Gods and the Earth. From that mid 80s up until the 90s, and then Wu-Tang came out. And 5% Lessons, Gods on Earth as well. So that's as far as I can remember in regards to the impact, because it kind of came in smooth, but then it just kind of just took off.
Gotcha. And then once it took off, what happened? What was the shift in the culture? What differences did you start seeing in people?
Their attire changed. It was more Islamic and like African centered, or you'll have like medallions or hats, African centered or Islamic centered, whether it's 5% or if it's just a crescent and a star, or if the hats are green, black, and red. Or the red, gold, and green, even though that's more Rastafarian. But it's just the attire, the clothes. Gotcha. Big change. Change.
Was there a change in the way people was partying? Because hip hop was always at the party. The party changed when those individuals began to make that kind of music?
I would say yes. But anyway, a good DJ knows how to play records according to how the crowd responds to certain records. So like the real conscious, where it's like consciousness straight throughout. People listen, people did dance, but not as much as just I don't know. I'm trying to think of an artist where you just throw something on, you'll just just go out. Like even like Kid and Play, getting funky, but like Twin Hype, or let's see, or like even going back before then, like the Funky Four, everybody just partied and jammed. Right. You had your party and jam, so everybody would get out, party and jam. And conscious stuff, people still dance, but people, they wouldn't be on the dance floor as much as like the real party anthem.
Got you. So if Kid and Play was playing, everybody on the dance floor. But if Rakim, Know the Ledge was on, they'd still be partying, but just a little bit less partying on the dance floor.
I would say they'll party more to like Microphone Fiend or Paid in Full.
Got you.
Even though we knew he was 5%, he got his cool feet, he got his Dookie chain, the 7. So it depends. If there's more consciousness in the lyrics, people wouldn't dance as much. There wasn't a lot of people on dance as opposed to Paid in Full. I was just thinking about a master plan, and that was what inside my hand. So
yeah. And
then people will speak the lyrics while it's playing and still dance. So yeah.
Got you. Now, how did you get into DJing?
Oh man,
You said you were a teenager DJing?
Yeah, I would say late teens, 19. It was after high school.
Okay.
19, maybe 25, somewhere around there. It was short-lived. But like I said, I did local house parties. Some friends that I grew up with on the block, if they moved to White Plains and Mount Vernon. There's a few parties up there. So I got into DJing from a friend of mine that I grew up with. He's still alive, so I can't say his name. His first name is the guy I grew up with. So he's the only DJ I've seen. He had his two turntables, his 1200s, and a mixer inside of the top of a coffin lid. It's a wild setup. He got it upside down, but he had it set up to where he had his two turntables, the mixer inside a coffin lid. So that was the first and only person I've seen who could DJ and cut records and MC at the same time.
Man, that's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah. I can't even imagine doing that. With all the movement they be doing
scratching and MCing at the same time. I'll give you this DJ name was Cutmaster D, but he taught me how to blend records. I wasn't much into scratching, so it was more like blending records and then cueing records in on the beat. So that's what I did, and then from there, since I had skill in blending records, I started getting more into house music.
Gotcha. House music. All right, and you mentioned house music before, and now that I'm older, because when I was young, I thought house music was way over there, hip hop was over here. But now as I get older, I'm starting to wonder, were they closer in the culture than I originally estimated?
Yes, because house music's origins is also disco and funk, jazz, because now you got soulful house, this jazzy type of house. You had that back then as well. And before it was called house music, it was called dance music or club music. Mm-hmm. So they both have their roots in funk, R&B, disco, even James Brown. Look how many group sampled James Brown,
Mhm.
Public Enemy, PDP, just for like break beats, or just
Right.
have the beat and just re-synthesizing like the melody. So
Mhm.
yeah, so they both have same origins, same origins.
Mhm.
Jazz, R&B, disco, um, funk. They both have the same origins. But the thing is with like house music, that was more so like faster beats per minute, like disco funk type of thing. And people express their pain on it. People express their joy, their dancing.
Mhm.
And I think that tempo, I think it's 110 and 120 beats per minute. And then that, took off as well. That's something like house. From what I understand with the history of house music, it was given the title house music because of this club in Chicago called the Warehouse.
Mhm.
Other than that, it was like club music or dance music.
Gotcha.
So that title was placed on the genre of music, house, because of that club called the Warehouse.
Gotcha. Now, was there a big difference between the hip hop audience and the house music audience? Because I can't imagine a 5%
Yes,
walking in with the big 7 chain
yes,
and the kufi on.
yes. There was a big difference, um, big difference.
Mhm.
But me, since I grew up on listening to music, my uncle, he was a house head. He's like a member of the Paradise Garage, the Loft, which is in Cuso. Paradise Garage, Larry Levan, Limelight, Shelter, which is much later. These other places, some music, he's a member of Benso, and he has tons of records. So I just started buying records. So I was exposed to both, being in the Bronx as hip hop, then dance music as well. I guess through my uncle. I'll say through my uncle, it's not that introduced dance music in house, but yes, different crowd unless you've been in the mix with both genres. Then to me, it's nothing new to me. But there was like a separation.
Gotcha.
We'll say,
Gotcha.
most hip hop heads will stay with hip hop, but some of them will like house music. The house music people, they're just like house music. They'll do hip hop. It's just straight up dancing to dance your troubles away, dance your pains away, dance the stress of life away. That's what I've seen a lot. And so the house music people, those who are house music, they expressed what they needed to get out through like dance. Or if you was an artist, through your music. Hip hop is like writing rhymes, beats, and then expressing it on wax. So.
Gotcha. Let us know about your spiritual journey. When did you come in contact personally with Islam and decide to go down that path?
Yeah. So again, going back to.
Oh, before you answer that question, what's your iteration of Islam?
What iteration?
Yeah. Like I'm a Sunni, just an Orthodox Sunni, but you have some brothers.
My iteration, I would just say Sufi. I've studied like so many different religions and walked their paths. So I would say with Islam, I would say I'm a Sufi Muslim because I like alchemy. I consider myself an alchemist. If you're doing your zikrs and your prayers, you're an alchemist. No matter what denomination you're in or whatever religion you're in, you're doing certain things according to what you need to do for spiritual transformation. You're an alchemist. You're like a lower level alchemist, but you're staying on top of what you need to and doing beyond your high level alchemist. So
Gotcha.
Sufi Muslim. But I'm also Tibetan Buddhist priest or Lama. So I've walked many paths. So Sufism.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Tell us about when you came in contact with Islam and decided to take that path.
So I came in contact with Islam, like I said, back when I was living in Harlem. So kindergartens were half days. So I went from 8 to 12 Then a sister from the daycare center will pick me up from 12 till my mother came here at 5. So that was Shabazz Nursery. It was on St. Nicholas Avenue between 155th and 154.
Mm-hmm.
The last time I've been in Harlem, it was Dominican daycare center, but that was 15 years ago the last time I was there. The Nation of Islam ran it, so that's where we listen to lectures a little bit, nothing crazy, nothing to like ruin children and okay, don't eat pork. Anyone gives you pork, spit the pork out, things like that, different prayers and like different affirmations, a little bit of Quran study, but no lectures talking about this person's that or that person's this. Yeah, we were young. This is on point. So that's when I was introduced to it, and then from there, I think my uncle had Malcolm X's autobiography. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I was reading at a young age, so I read his autobiography, read about 19 years as well, but I read his autobiography and then started then I got me a paperback Quran and some books, $3 at the time, and just started reading and studying on my own a little bit, but then back to church as well. And then as I got older, just started looking for more truth. But yeah, so the Nation of Islam, that was my first introduction to Islam. And then when I got into I would say my late teens, or I would say early 20s, when I started studying more Orthodox Islam. Mm-hmm. So got me a Yusuf Ali Quran. Started studying like with Sunni Islam as well, and I also was introduced to Sufism as well back then, like magic squares and different secrets as well. And then I was all over the place also. Mm-hmm. To answer your question, Nation Islam.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was it's very similar to that when I was young. I know I was raised in a Pentecostal household and started asking certain questions and wasn't satisfied with the answers. I was a Jehovah's Witness for a little while. Then I came across a book called The Religions of Man by Houston Smith. Started studying Hinduism and Buddhism and got into meditation, which actually the meditation actually saved my life because I was suffering with major depression. So meditating every single day ended up kind of mentally stabilizing me enough where I could kind of like get a little bit better. And for a long time I was studying a little bit of everything until I got very, very sick a couple of years ago. I had kidney failure and still dealing with that. But when I was laying in the hospital, I was listening to a lot of lectures about Islam. And I said, you know what? I think I need Islam because when I was on my spiritual path, I was touching on everything, but I felt like I make up my own rules to go along. That's why I liked the path that I was on, because it wasn't no rules. I can kind of just study, get the knowledge, no rules. But I said, for my personality type, I need rules because I need numbers. I need numbers. And Islam tells you pray 5 times a day, eat this kind of food, behave this kind of way this time of year, do these rituals. Islam is very specific. And I think a lot of people need that. Following my own path got me, kidney failure. I was an alcoholic and I'm like, there was no rules that said I had to stop drinking. So I just kept drinking. Islam says you can't drink. So if I had something like that with specific rules, as opposed to me just doing whatever I wanted, whenever I felt like it, if I had something specific, it could have saved my life or could have saved my health. That's why I always tell people I really wish I was born Muslim.
Right, because you had sort of like a foundation of discipline.
Right.
Usually those born into like the religion, especially Islam, you don't see a lot of people leave. Now like Christianity or even like Judaism, a lot of people, they're born into it, but then they leave, they divert, and they just leave alone. Those who are born Muslim, there's a higher percentage of them who just stick to Islam and what they know.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. The human brain needs that structure. The whole idea that and I'm not knocking Christianity, but there's a lot of Christians who go to church, but there's no rules. The pastor's afraid to lay down rules. So you got individuals who can come in there and kind of, live how they want to live and do what they want. But I think a lot of people probably get sick of that. I think even if you got everything you wanted every single day, you eventually get sick of it. Because the human brain just needs structure and it needs progress. You can't progress without structure.
That's true. That's true. And there's rules that have rules in that Bible. They got 613 in that Torah. So I don't think they got 613 in that book. But it's like anything goes in life.
Right.
Islam is more structured. This is what you do and do not do. It's there, but they don't teach it or preach it unless you do your own research. I've been down that road research as well with the Torah and trying to learn Hebrew and Islam, trying to learn Arabic, Mandarin, trying to like speak and read Mandarin just to like understand certain words and phrases. Certain words and phrases in certain languages doesn't really translate to English. Right. So, but that was my quest back then. Me, I just was still sticking with like learning Arabic, but at my own pace.
Right.
Mandarin, Spanish, I'm decent in. French and but yeah, just I'm just worried about my own spiritual growth and transformation now in this day and time. What's going on? You got to be an alchemist in these days and times. So.
Yeah, right. So, after all the things you study, you mentioned that you're actually a Lama in Buddhism, and all the other paths that you study. What made you say, let me zero in on Tasawwuf?
I guess because I was first introduced to Islam, and then through the Nation of Islam, and then like later in my 20s, having a book or two on Sufism, and then also practicing Orthodox Islam as well. But there was just something about Islam, like the discipline. Zikrs, because I was also studying Sufism as well, and also magic squares. So I was like, well, there's a lot of like practical. It's very practical. But Christianity is not really practical. I mean, people get down on your knees and like pray, whatever. But with Islam, if you have a discipline, there's a lot of stuff to do during the day. And if you're a Sufi, there's a lot of stuff to the second or third power on top of it.
About that.
What we have to do, with the prayers, and then on top of that, more alchemy, you got the zikrs. And more alchemy, you gotta do like squares or just use zikrs or the mathematical formulas of the zikrs. How many times are you supposed to say it? Well, you need this to manifest. This is what you need to do.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. Yeah, that's interesting to me too, because I noticed that there's specific numbers for everything in Islam, and I find that real fascinating. I gotta study what those numbers mean. I don't know what the numbers mean. I just know that with certain things, I get instructions. Like I heard that when you walk into the masjid, you say astaghfirullah 33 times, but I never studied what does the 33 mean. Or like certain zikrs, they say do it 313 times. I don't know what those numbers mean. I gotta study those numbers.
I know with the abjad, which is counting the numerical values of the Arabic letters, the abjad. So each letter is equivalent to a certain number. It's the same thing with the Hebrew letters. I think they have like 22 alphabets. Islam is like 26. So when you say a certain word, it'll add up to a certain number.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll add up to a certain number. So when you get that certain number, you would get like that would be a zikr.
Gotcha.
Right, and then from that zikr is something that something you want to manifest, or something like a business, or to get rid of like sickness or something like that. It's that zikr, and you say it a certain amount of times. every day will manifest it.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
that sound and that number is going into the universe. So like one zikr that I do, I'll share, it's called Hasbi Allahu Lima Ahamani. You know, you would do that 322 times with like a Quranic angel. Yeah, and that's for like, I won't say selfish desires, but things you need in life. Hey, I need a new couch, or I need a new water heater, air conditioning unit, or I want to get this for my business. I need new tables, or I need a new computer. You know, I need this for things you need in life, which is material, and also things you need in life spiritually as well. So if you have stuff written down, or if you have it in the head what you want to manifest, you keep that in mind when you do it, and then you do your zikr for a certain amount of time. So that's what I like about Islam. It's very mathematical, very practical.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm glad you taught me that. I never knew that. I never had no idea about that.
Yeah. So I think they had an abjad class earlier this year. I didn't have time to sign up for it, but I was, studying that stuff with the abjad on my own. I know, and like it's also called gematria.
Gematria, yeah, I've heard that name before.
Yeah, so it's sort of like this saying when you're getting the numerical values of the letters, but with gematria it goes a little bit deeper in for what number means what. Like 4 will mean death, 6 will mean something else, 8 will mean this, 11's. It's sort of similar. So it's dealing with mathematics in the universe.
Gotcha. Now, when you look at hip hop, you see a major influence with you see influence with the 5% of the Nation of Islam, of course. Now you're starting to see more of a rise of what they call Orthodox Islam and hip hop. With Beanie Siegel and Gilly the Kid and Freeway and artists like that. You got Lil Durk just converted to Islam, Orthodox Islam. Did you ever notice any Sufi influence in hip hop music?
I think the only, let's see, 10 seconds. There may have been, but the only person that I know of that had like a little, had mentioned Sufi in like a conscious album is his brother who was in Canada. I think he might be in Chicago now. Gosh, what's his name? On his first album, it was called Iron Shade. So this guy with locks. Gosh, what's his name? I forgot his name, but I have his album. But there's a line in there, a song he has called Sun Falcon. And he says a line, he says, not yoga Yuda, frees you with the mudra. Return of Kali Yuga is the Moorish Sufi Buddha. Something like that. He says in one of his lines. Crazy. So that's all the time.
That sounds crazy. Yeah, that sounds crazy.
Yeah, he says, not Yuga, frees you with the mudra. Return of Kali Yuga is the Moorish Sufi Buddha. Killed by a trooper was William Milton Cooper, the dude who wrote The Pale Horse. That was a line. So his first album was fine. I'll see if I have it on electronically. I know I have it on my external drives. So it's more like conscious. Yeah. But like lyrics. I mean, explicit lyrics, but that's the only person I've ever heard mention like Sufi.
Yeah, the actual like direct mention of Sufi, I don't think I ever heard, but of course you see a little bit of the impact in it. If you listen to Jerry the Damager's first album, he had a song called Ain't the Devil Happy. And that first verse, he was talking about traveling beyond space and time and everything begins in the mind. Like a lot of it sounds very mystical, very Sufi if you listen to it.
I have a song. I'm gonna check it out. Check it out later.
Yeah, the first verse, Ain't the Devil Happy. And he's breaking it down. It's dope. And I think, of course, if you listen to the RZA, he's a 5%er, but you kind of see a little bit of Sufi impact. Yeah, I think altogether in the Nation of Islam and the Five Percenters and the Moors, I think there's a lot of Sufism in that. It might
Right,
not be direct. It might not be direct, but I definitely think there's
right.
some Sufism in that. The RZA did a solo song off the Eight Diagram album called Sunlight. I think it's called Sunlight. And that's if you listen to that, that's heavy. I used to meditate to that. That's heavy Sufism. If you listen to that one.
Yeah, I don't have that album. I don't have that
Yeah,
album.
I think after a while, the audience still loved Wu-Tang, but the albums themselves didn't have the same impact for whatever reason. Maybe the industry changed, the market changed, but I think they still had classic material.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, RZA, I think he spread himself thin with all these groups.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's definitely true.
yeah, he spread
That is
himself.
definitely true. Yeah, but well, as you were studying Sufism, because for years I would hear that Sufism, and you can't, or at least me at the time, I had difficulty finding any books that talk directly about Sufic principles or explain exactly what it is. Was there any book that you read where you was like, okay, yeah, this is breaking it down?
Yeah, like in book form was I think it was Alone with the Alone by gosh, what's his name? Alone with the Alone. I forgot his name. That was like years ago. And also with there's I used to be down with the Nubians as well. So down at New York had like there was like a group called the Sons of the Green Light. So I got in on the tail end of that. I had repurchased the lessons, but those are Sufi lessons since New York did go to school out there in Sudan and Egypt as well.
Okay.
Back in the days, I think he has his doctorate out at the University of Al Azhar, fluent in Arabic, fluent in Hebrew. So yeah, Sons of the Green Light was like the lessons that were like esoteric. And after that closed down. It was like ancient mystic order of Melchizedek. I know Shem El, he was down at one point in time back in the days. So, and some of those lessons kind of overlap. So that was like first introduction to like practical exercises. Sufism.
Gotcha.
But then
And
Corbin is the guy's name. Alone with the Alone.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha. How did you get into the when you became a part of the Nuwapians? At what stage was the organization? Because I know at one point it started off as pure Sufi in the '60s, then it became Ansar, then it became, I think after that, the Hebrew Islamic Hebrew.
Nubian Islamic Hebrews.
Yep.
Then so I came in like right at the beginning of the Nuwabian stage.
Okay.
At the Nuwabian stage. And there, or like near the, like right at the beginning. So Sons of the Green Light, they had ended, and then Ancient Mystic Order Melchizedek started. So I still have my card. That was back in like 90, I don't know, like 94, 95. So it was like mid 90s, somewhere around there. So yeah, like 94, 95, I believe. So again, with the Sons of the Green Light, Ancient Mystic Order, some of the lessons overlap.
Gotcha. How'd you get involved with the Nuwapian movement?
Yeah, so I would say, yes, answer your question. So I would say my uncle had a book. It was called the Book of the Five Percenters. And I think that's my first introduction to Imam Isa. He had the book. It was a soft cover book about that thick. And then that's when I made the correlation that they were the same people who were in Brooklyn, Bushwick. And then from there, I just took I got his book, made a photocopy of his book, And then I would say like a couple of years later, I went down to Harlem, and there's some Nubians out there, and I bought 2 books. The first book was called The People of the Sun or Children of the Sun, and the other one was, I think it was Mission Earth, extraterrestrial involvement. And I was like, wait a minute. And then I saw the picture. I said, wait a minute, this is Imam Isa from the book I got from home. That's okay. Did that make a correlation? Then okay, well then I found out, it's a branch of Georgia, after moving to upstate New York. And then from there, that's when I started to get more involved, buying all the scrolls. Summertime, like in June, I think we had a bus ride down from New York to Georgia to get people on the land. So it was nice. It was nice. So that, and then buying more books, getting more involved. And you had the Ancient Mystic Order of Melchizedek, you had Ancient Egyptian Order as well. So part of that as well. Because I'm just into practice alchemy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I just like read a lot, studied a lot, and actually eventually moved from New York. Even though I was tired of New York, I moved down to Georgia as well, like east of Atlanta, just for a change as well. Then since I was already here, make trips out there every weekend, every other weekend. Something was going on, something spiritual was going on. Nothing cultish going on, anything like that. To do, the spiritual stuff, or to hang out.
Gotcha.
At a fish fry, or someone was lecturing, or the triad was lecturing, or Dr. York was lecturing, or like near the end of June. The end of June was his birthday, I think June 26th. They'll have Saviors. So it was just fun, spiritual and fun.
Wow. You know what? I think this is the first time anybody used that word to describe their involvement with Dr. York. Fun. I never heard nobody describe it as fun before. That's very interesting. What was your impression of him when you saw him in the flesh?
I didn't look at him as like a celebrity, because each time when I would see him when he was in Orlando, or if he was lecturing, he didn't put himself off, carry himself as like a celebrity like that. Was I in awe the first couple of times? Yeah, everybody, because he's a dude writing books. And a lot of that truth resonated with me. So when you fast forward to 25, 30 years later, everything, or 90-something% of the stuff he put in those books came to pass. There's this one book he wrote called Man from Planet Risk, and talks about the Philadelphia experiment. So the story I heard, and this is like a couple hours before I got to go hang out up there. The story I heard is like this one old white dude, scientist, came to the pylons where the gate was. He says, is this the place where I can find Malachi York? He says, who are you? He's like, I have this book here, and I was a part of this Philadelphia experiment. How did you know this stuff? Where did he get it from? Yeah. So yeah.
That's crazy.
So a lot of stuff came to pass, or has come to pass already in regards to information. But where I am now, I still have the majority of all my books. I'll read every now and then, because his books gave me like a foundation already, become like a critical thinker. It's like in the school back in like the 70s, grade school, we didn't really have we had a little bit of critical. I think we were at the tail end of them taking critical thinking out of the schools. Yeah. So it was like critical thinking. The other thing was how to reason. They just never taught us that at school. So that those books gave me or I would say woke up whatever critical thinking skills I was given in grade school, whatever at the tail end. Yeah. Yeah, yes, it's fun because to me, I approach alchemy um, without any expectations, so I make it fun.
Gotcha.
You get your manifestations, you're going without expectations. It's fun. So when manifestations do arise, you're like, oh,